Hey, you wild women. Wow, I have not recorded a solo episode in a while. Sometimes I'm like, how do I even do this? So here I am celebrating, still maintaining my spot in the top 1% podcast in the world. Hallelujah. And today, a funny thing had just happened. There must have been some wires crossed, but I had scheduled at this time a recording with somebody else. And when I was looking at their Instagram this morning, I saw that she was getting makeup done for TV. So I feel like some media thing happened last minute and wires got crossed. So she was unable to show up this morning. Now, old me would have taken that personally. I have been working so hard on my reactions. And obviously, I talk about this all the time, coming back to my spiritual therapist, Stephanie, how she says true enlightenment can be like Gandhi, who was in solitary confinement for 19 years or something like that, and still found joy in life, despite being traumatized, beaten, you name it. So, what he went through, he was still grateful for life. Now, we are fortunate enough, most of us, and especially those tuning in, that we don't live that life, hopefully, that we are not getting beaten in a dark room and not get to see the day of light and barely get to eat. So when we look at the things that happened to us, or as Tony Robbins says, happened for us, there really is beauty around us. But today I want to talk about unlocking abundance and elevating your self-worth for greater success. So, the biggest thing that I want to come to you is really talking about this thing called the abundance trap. But questions for you first is, have you ever been utterly embarrassed for having something more than your friends, or achieving more in business than your business besties, or maybe turning your body into a temple that you've always dreamed of, getting maybe that six-pack ab or losing the 20 pounds? Have you ever silenced yourself for fear you may sound like you're showing off or gloating, or not show someone your new bag because it makes you look fancy? I have. And I'm going to tell you a story about my first ride in my husband's supercar when he first got it. But I want to tell you a little bit about the abundance trap. So, the abundance trap is it's a concept that refers to the paradox where the pursuit of abundance, often driven by a scarcity mindset, leads to negative consequences and dissatisfaction. Does that sound like you? So the concept that refers to the paradox where the pursuit of abundance leads to a scarcity mindset and is driven by that scarcity mindset. So while we want to all achieve the feeling of abundance, knowing that, hey, if I'm making more money, it doesn't mean that somebody else is getting more poor, because the abundance mindset really means that there's abundance for all of us. The trap is that we think that we're going through life, coasting through our business, that we have to have the scarcity mindset. The problem is that it leads you to thinking more negatively, because by us thinking that we have to have more money, more cars, more employees, more opportunities, is really creating kind of stress in our life for many reasons. So how this manifests in our lives, and I've seen this in my life, even as of late, is by way of overconsumption. So sometimes they say retail therapy, which I think is a great marketing ploy, by the way. But I see myself doing this sometimes, where I will there's 100% a correlation between my home feeling stressful and how much stuff is in it. So every spring and fall, we go through a purge. And right now I'm looking at probably the tidiest my office has ever been. I don't like to collect things. And so it's always hard at the end of a school year when your kids bring home all of the artwork and you're like, what do I do with this? Some of it's cool, some of it we keep, but some of it we secretly throw out. And yes, the Marie Kondo is, does this bring me joy, is a very vague approach to getting rid of stuff. But are you in a season of over accumulation? Are you going out and buying more things to think this is what's going to lead you to happiness and security? So what really happens in these moments is clutter stress and potentially financial strain. The other thing too, in terms of overconsumption, is that resource depletion. So this could be personal and environmental. It could lead to burnout too, because it's like this vicious cycle of got to get more, then I got to work more to make more money to get more, and what to keep up with the Joneses. So keeping up with the Joneses is the abundance trap. Keeping up with the Joneses is a value trap, thinking that if I have all the things they have and the vacations that they have, that I will be accepted and validated. No, what you do isn't a value. It's who you are is a value. So what happens also in this abundance trap is a perpetual dissatisfaction. You're never okay with what you have in this moment. As my spiritual therapist says, the future and the past don't exist. They don't exist. It's because only the here and now exists. Me holding this crystal, me putting on lip gloss, like touching and feeling this desk is here now. So those that are perpetually dissatisfied are constantly looking at how can they accumulate more stuff, more accolades, or how they could have fixed something that happened in the past. Dissatisfaction is really looking ahead or behind. Nothing is ever good enough. Then you're setting up for this huge comparison culture. Man, I used to be so terrible at this, but I've come to a place now where instead of looking online and being jealous or envious of anything anybody has ever done, I applaud them. And the biggest thing right now for me is in the world of fitness. Whenever I see a woman who has incredible muscles, is strong and fit, I am so proud of them, for them, because I know how much work goes into growing those muscles. So if you are always defaulting to these feelings of not enough or always comparing yourself to somebody else, whether it is shared, whether it's implied, or whether you're just telling this quiet story in your head, you will never be happy. You will never be satisfied. And here's the thing, the truth, the hard truth, other people's opinion of you is none of your business because that's their opinion of you. If you're a nice, gracious, kind person that has boundaries, that is happy and content with their life and sure wants more, then who cares what other people think of you? So the other thing the abundance trap leads you through is a loss of balance. The work-life imbalance. You're perpetuating this by relentlessly trying to grow your business for financial gain, for popularity, for influence, for affluence. It causes stress and burnout. So it's still in the DL now, but there's some really cool things happening within my company, big shifts in the industry that have caused me to focus on some really cool things in the coming months. And I went through, I guess this time last year, so July of 2023, I was burnt out because I was starting this business up again. And what was burning me out wasn't the excitement to get this going. It was the stress of getting the systems going so that I can start to focus on the business that I actually didn't want to do. I wasn't truthful to myself because I was jumping back into a version of PR that I was known for, that I was good at, that people were messaging me to hire me for. And I was saying yes to making more money, even though it was causing me to lack abundance in my life because it was causing me stress and burnout. The other thing it does is it makes you sacrifice your values, like ethical compromises, right? Losing integrity in your values because you're perpetually working longer hours and maybe you're cutting corners on some things. Maybe you're not paying your employees or some team members what they should be getting paid so that you can take a bigger cut, like all these things. You start being a little bit malicious intentionally or maybe unintentionally because you're trying to achieve something, to prove something to somebody. It's not right. The other thing is the loss of authenticity. And in the world of social media and the world of PR, the most important thing is to be authentic. When you are constantly striving to meet some version of societal standards of success that is so misaligned or so unaligned with who you are and what it is you want to do, you lose that authenticity. You become disingenuous and people can read it. They can see it on your face. They can see it in the energy you bring into a room, onto a webinar, into a meeting. People will start to see it. And what happens is you abandon the interest of the things you think you need to do to achieve success. And then you start throwing grenades into your business, grenades into your personal life, because the chaos is what keeps you going. The chaos is what you think you need in order to be successful. And here are a couple of things that cause the abundance trap. And let me know if this is something that you reflect with, if this is something that sounds familiar, or maybe it's what you're going through now, or maybe it's something that you've kind of survived. As I mentioned to you, the scarcity mindset, the fear of lack, cultural conditioning. This is all in us, ingrained in our society ever since we were children, as men, as women, is that we have to be a certain thing in order to be accepted or validated, leading us to the understanding of external validation, right? Seeking approval, seeking social media influence. Like if I have more followers, then people will pay more attention. And there's nothing wrong with having a lot of followers. There's nothing wrong with people paying attention to you. What's wrong with that is that if you're doing it out of integrity, if you're doing it in a way that's completely inauthentic, if you're taking advantage of a system of people, a community, it's not okay. So now I want to tell you quickly about the story when my husband got his first supercar. It was a bright orange McLaren. We were the first ones in our province to have a McLaren like this. And I remember when he got it, honest to goodness truth, so proud of him. He had been talking about this car ever since I met him, and he finally got it. And word got out around town that Dan had this McLaren. So before I knew it, there were strangers, people I had never seen before in my life, showing up to my house, knocking on my door, or literally following me home as I opened the garage to take a peek at the car. It was kind of scary. I felt very unsafe. And this car was getting a lot of attention. And at the time, in my mind, I associated the dude that drove the fancy car as the person who was probably one who took advantage of people or a system, right? I've said this before. There are two types of people in the world. In my mind, when you see a really nice car drive past you, some people will say, "Oh, look at that douchebag." Right? If that's you, then bow your head because that is such a terrible mindset to have. Another person might say, "I wonder what he did to afford that car," or "I wonder what he does for a living," because we're curious. So you can see the two different mindsets. One is, that guy's a douchebag. I could never like him because he has a fancy car. What's the story you're really telling yourself? Really, in my mind, it's you're jealous. The other person is in this position where maybe they want to achieve that too. What has that person done to be able to afford that? I'm curious. I want to know because maybe that's something I want to do. And maybe there's other types of people in there, but in my mind, that is what I've noticed. And it's not just about the fancy car. It could be about the trips. It could be about the nice bags you have. It could be about the house you live in, the community you live in, the people you would surround yourself with, right? There's always people chirping. And those chirpers are not your friends because they are not going to be your biggest cheerleaders. No. Your biggest cheerleaders are the ones that are showing up and polishing that car for you. So anyways, outside of feeling really unsafe, the first summer that Dan had this car, the boys were in their first sleepaway camp, and we decided to take a road trip to Maine. And I thought, okay, we're going to go into the US where I feel like there's probably a higher proportion of fancy cars, race cars per capita. So we get to Portland, Maine, and we get out, and it's not that big of a city. And the amount of people stopping, taking pictures. They were stopping Dan. They were asking questions. They were looking inside. They wanted pictures. They were looking at me. I hated the attention. I hated the attention because I thought people were negatively judging me or judging my husband. I thought people were saying, "Oh, look at that gold digger." Oh, something along the lines of, "Look at her. She's probably not a nice human." So I was so worried about what other people were going to think about me because I was in that car, which did not allow me for the entirety of that 5-day road trip to actually enjoy being in the vehicle. I was the one judging myself. I was the one that was looking at myself from the outside in, saying, look at that girl in that car. I wasn't enjoying the craftsmanship of this cool vehicle. I wasn't enjoying how excited Dan was to drive the vehicle. I was not swimming in abundance. I was swimming in fear and conditioning and worried that people were going to judge me for who, like, these people don't even know me. And I'm sure if these words were said, and I'm sure if you're listening, maybe one time you said some of these words, not about me, but about somebody else, or you've had it said to you. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because other people's opinions of you are none of your business. So after I got back and I was like, why was this such a trigger for me? I know so many people that it would have been so excited to drive in a McLaren, let alone one you own. And so I reflected on this, and let me tell you, it took me a couple years. And now, my husband owns, I don't know, 4 race cars. I call them race cars or supercars. And he throws me the keys and he's like, hey, you go drive this one. You gotta learn how to drive this one. And now I drive our Lambo and I love it. I love it because if nobody could see who was driving the car, didn't care. These cars are so cool to drive. They are so cool to drive. But you know what's really cool is when those really positive people come up and they start asking you questions about the vehicle. The other day, Dan and I went for a quick coffee date. We went downtown Kelowna and he had his Ferrari, a rare Ferrari. And we could see the car parked across from the coffee shop. And Dan kind of nudged me. He goes, look at those 2 men there. They were probably in their early to mid 70s. And you can see them like chatting with each other, like pointing at stuff. And like, we were so curious what conversation they were having. But you could tell they were happy and excited to see the vehicle. And I sat there proud of my husband, proud of them to be able to also enjoy the vehicle. That when I went back up to that car, I kind of wanted people to see me go into the car. How cool is that? I wasn't trying to be show offy, like, hey, look at me. But the mentality change was like, this is a great car and this is part mine. So here are some things to overcome the abundance trap is really try to find yourself in these moments when you're trying to do something that you're not aligned with, that you're letting people overstep your boundaries. You have to set those boundaries, but also you need a balanced approach. You need to set realistic goals. You need to prioritize your well-being. You need to have a gratitude practice. That could be, a 5-minute journal in the morning or even stopping yourself throughout the day when you're walking through your office or walking through your home or sitting in the car in traffic with your kids. Like, what are those micro moments of incredible abundance? What are you grateful for in this moment right now? Wherever you're tuning in from, look around you. What can you see, smell, touch, hear, feel? That is beautiful. It could be anything, and it is everything. And I think in those moments of like fear and worry and judgment and feeling not enough and scarcity, we look at all the things that aren't working for us in those moments. So instead, take a moment and be like, what am I grateful for right now? We live in a beautiful house that overlooks the city as well as overlooks the an east side of the mountain. So we have this really unique position that our house is on this kind of peninsula on a mountain where we have mountain and city views from both sides of our house. And it never fails me every single day of the over 3 years that we've been living here that I look outside and I go, wow, this is incredible. It never gets old. People ask us, does it get old? Nope. It never gets old. It never gets old walking into this office. It never gets old that I get to use a really cool mic or that I get to buy myself a new laptop or that I get to go and pick up my kids at the end of their camp today because I want to. So the balanced approach is just really falling deep into gratitude into those moments and realizing that life is beautiful, not because of what you have or what you do, but because inside it's who you are. So the other things you can do is understand your self-worth. Reflect on the things. Like I just went through a crazy 25-day revolving door of guests that Even my husband got overwhelmed yesterday. He finally proved his weakness. He had a little crack in his strong outer core, of which he got overwhelmed with the sheer amount of people that were always in our house. Now, it's hard for us because we love our friends so deeply, but it just so happened that the timing of all these trips were like back to back to back. So, anyway, my spiritual therapist said yesterday, or 2 days ago, in a call when I was like overwhelmed by all these things, she's like, Renee, what you're really overwhelmed with has nothing to do with what you think you're overwhelmed with. And I asked her how that can, like, what are you talking about? You're a crazy woman. What overwhelms me are all of the stories that I tell in my head about the expectations I think people have of me that I need to fulfill, if that makes sense. So I got overwhelmed, not actually by the fact that my friends were here and we were hosting them. I got overwhelmed with what I thought was my expectation and my role in hosting them here and bringing them on wine tours and making sure the kids are fed and all these things. And never once did I say no to something. Never once did I ask for help. And I can guarantee you that had I said no to something or asked for help, it would not have changed their entire experience staying with us. So even in those moments of beauty, when I was going on a wine tour or having dinner with these friends or on the boat, I was still telling these stories in my head, like on the boat. Oh, geez, we're going to have to empty all the cans off this boat when we get to the dock. And then we get to the dock, Dan's going to need help docking the boat. We're out in the middle of the lake and I'm still telling these stories in my head. I'm causing my own stress and burnout. So if I can't be here in the present, I will be completely dissatisfied about what's happening in my life. So that's the point of dissatisfaction, is you're thinking in the head or in the past. I couldn't be present, couldn't be on the boat with the beautiful sunset and my friends, and like the littles were passing out from exhaustion and they were taking naps on their dad's chest. And it was so beautiful. So think about moments in your life when you think that you're in a mindset of abundance, that you think you're not worthy of the things that you've achieved, and how you need to just come back to unlocking that within yourself. And it is baby steps, but unlocking that abundance is really about being in the now. If you can accumulate more moments of being present, you will feel more abundance. That's it. And if you can really believe that other people's reactions aren't yours, they shouldn't affect you. They really shouldn't. That me thinking other people were judging me about the car that I was sitting in as a passenger allowed me to not be satisfied with the experience. And to think that abundance, to think that feeling enough, to think that being satisfied was merely just being in that vehicle with my husband driving across the state was the most beautiful thing. And I didn't allow myself to do that. Oh my God, how exhausting. So, homework for you is make a list of all those stories you keep telling yourself in your mind about the things in your life where you're not enough, where you're dissatisfied, where you're jealous and envious, where you lack abundance, and start to elevate yourself. Give yourself some grace and give yourself the best gift of all, of feeling that you are worth it. Until next time, ladies.